quarterback right there. Now, how does that tie into where we are today? It ties into where we are today because all through the season, if you paid any attention to any mock drafts, you saw Shedeur Sanders near the top of those mock drafts. When you got to the end of the season, you saw him there. Now, by the time you got to the end of the season, you stopped seeing people talking about him being the first quarterback taken. That was pretty much Cam Ward from the beginning, right? Heisman Trophy runner-up Cam Ward. That was the guy. We all acknowledge this. We talked about Cam Ward so little during the draft. They barely talked about him at the draft. I don't know if you saw this, but on ESPN, as soon as Cam Ward got drafted, they got that stupid long-ass walk that everybody has to do before they get there. It's like 90 seconds between when the dude gets drafted and he actually gets there to get to the stage. That man took 2 steps, and they was already talking about the trade of the next pick that wound up with Travis Hunter going to Jacksonville. That man was the number 1 pick in the draft, and they barely talked about him at all because the number 1 pick in everybody's heart was actually Shedeur Sanders. The number 1 story for everybody was actually Colorado. Like they were a great television story, and they pushed the television story out there. But anyway, you started seeing drafts that would have Shedeur as like maybe number 7 somewhere in the draft, right? But it wasn't number 1, but it was still early. And so people who don't know any better are reading these mock drafts and acting like that stuff matters. You have to understand this. They put out mock drafts for one reason and one reason only. Because y'all are stupid enough to read them. That's the only reason. Think about that for a second. What the hell does what somebody think in September got to do with what's going to happen in April? Nothing. These things aren't binding, right? Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they don't go audit these things. Like when they have a mock draft, they don't show you a picture of 3 white men in suits talking about how they audited this and signed for it. Nobody does that. They just sit up and they put some shit on a list and they send it out there. It is no different than if you saw that documentary, what was it called? The Scheme or whatever, about the dude Christian Dawkins, the one that it got caught up in the NCAA pay-for-play stuff a few years ago. And when he was in middle school or high school, he had started his own newsletter ranking players, like basketball players. And he put himself in the top 10. Why? Because why not? This stuff doesn't matter. Nobody cares about this shit. They didn't care. He's just like, yeah, I'm in the top 10. Yeah, I'm one of the greatest basketball players in the country. Ain't that something? Who was there to say that he wasn't? It didn't matter. And that's the same way every single one of these mock drafts is. The entire way. They don't matter. They just need you to look at the mock draft. And one way to get you to look at the mock draft is to put Shedeur Sanders in it, right? This drives the industry of the draft. The most amazing thing about the draft as an industry is the draft matters as much as like it matters for the teams themselves. But what's amazing is they get y'all to follow it all the way up until the draft. They get you to keep into it. They get you into the research of it. Now, look, never mind the fact that whoever your team take is going to be who your team take, and you're going to be on board with them. No. You get yourself set up, and you get your preferences, and you take word from this person, and you take word from that person. People love being the people to have opinions, so you can read a little magazine here, read a website there, everything else. But none of that stuff actually matters. And when they rule those mock drafts during the regular season that get you to the start of draft season, people haven't even actually started paying attention to the film like that. They're not there. They just have come up with something that you are willing to read. But you have to understand that all it is reading material. After you're done reading it in the bathroom, you could flush it with the other paper. It matters that little. Okay? That's what it is. So we need to start there. Because when Shedeur Sanders was not drafted after day 1 and not drafted after day 2, the question I saw being asked by those who would defend him was, tell me how it is that he was projected to go early and now he's projected to go late. And the only way you're asking that question is if you have never paid attention to the draft ever. Ryan, you are an LSU guy, right? You went to LSU. You're an LSU fan. You are from Louisiana.
Sure am.
How many times have you seen an LSU player make a fall, like something similar. We thought he was going to go here, comma, but.
LSU players have fallen for everything to Lyle Collins, that dramatic fall. He was a projected first rounder. There are many reasons, on field, off field. There's, what that process takes a lot of different forms for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, right. It goes. So in this draft, Quinn Ewers, who played quarterback at Texas, Quinn Ewers was not projected to be a first-round pick necessarily, but Quinn Ewers was projected to be one of the 4 or 5 top quarterbacks taken in that draft. Quinn Ewers did not get drafted until the 7th round. This happens to all kinds of players. I saw something where Ryan Clark's son, Jordan, who played DB at Notre Dame, was expected to be taken in the draft. I saw somewhere like in the first 2 days. He wound up being undrafted. This happens. Right? This is a thing. However, those who don't know that much about this process immediately went to conspiracy. And that infuriated me so much. Stephen A. Smith went and said that he received a text from somebody who said that this feels like Kaepernick all over again. And I don't know who said that to Stephen A. Smith, but for that own person's sake, I am glad they did not put his or her name on it, whoever that person was, because I think you are dumb. Like, if you actually think that is what happened, I think you are probably stupid. Here's why I think you are probably stupid. Colin Kaepernick has not had a job in the NFL since 2017. I have lived in New York City for 8 years. I have never watched Colin Kaepernick play football in this city, okay? That's how it looks when you get blackballed. What y'all think happened to Shedeur? Y'all think he got grayballed? Like, if your argument is they wanted to show this outspoken black man his place, number one, let us stop acting like outspoken and obnoxious are perfect synonyms. They are not. Show me something that Shedeur Sanders has spoken out about. Tell me what that thing is. Tell me what his cause is, right? He's not outspoken. I have not seen any reason to call him outspoken. Even if you think he's been treated unfairly, outspoken is a stretch, and it is a ridiculous thing to say about him, I believe. Okay? But if you think the league was trying to show Shedeur and his daddy something, if you think the league was trying to send a message, why would the message be, you're a 5th round pick? If they were going to show him a message, he wouldn't get drafted. Again, if you're going to compare him to Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job. That's how they send a message. What you think? You think the white man is trying to show a message to us delicately? When has the white man ever showed us anything with finesse? That is not how the white man works. The white man will smack you upside the head and put your face in the mud if that's what the white man trying to do. And they took him in the 5th round. That's not what happened here. There's no legitimate evidence to what happened here, okay? If your argument is the NFL wanted to show an arrogant dude how to get in line, go check some of the things that Cam Ward has had to say about himself and how well he plays. That is no shrinking violet. That is not a humble young man. But you know what he is? A first-round talent. And as a first-round talent, he got drafted in the 1st round. Guys, 15 years ago, Cam Newton went number 1 in the draft. You think you think that's not the dude that somebody would feel the need to show a message to? You think that's not the guy that somebody would want to talk to? He went number 1 overall in the draft in the course of that year. I'm just saying, you need to explain better to me why it is that they go send a message to Shedeur. You're like, oh, they want to send a message to Deion Sanders. Nobody has been more instrumental in building the legend of Deion Sanders than the NFL. People in the NFL have very high opinions of Deion Sanders. If not, he wouldn't have worked at the NFL network for so damn long, right? What strikes me about this is that for so many people, and I get it, I think that we are using a somewhat antiquated notion of what it is to be a black quarterback in the NFL. Things are not the same as they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm not even sure if they're the same as they were 5 years ago. But this is the bottom line. I'm not out here saying that racism is over, right? And I am deathly afraid of being the person that's out here giving the white man a little bit too much credit. That is not good for business, at least not for my business, okay? However, I will say this. In the NFL, if you are a quarterback and they don't think that you're a starter, there's no real press to take you in the draft if they don't think that you are a starter. There's just no real press, right? But then there's number two, and this part is very important. If you are going to be on an NFL roster as a quarterback, but you are not a player, or like you're not going to play, right? It is imperative that you be a great hang. Your job is to be part of the support staff. Your job is to sit in the room, watch film, soak up game, and do what you can to help the starter. That's what it is. That's what your job is to do if you are a quarterback who is not a starting quarterback. That is the bottom line. How much they like you matters at backup quarterback more than it matters anywhere else. My good buddy Steve White, God rest his soul, he made this point many years ago. He was like, they don't put a whole lot of assholes on that clipboard. Like, let me give you an example. You think Jeff George was unable to play after the age of 34? Jeff George can throw that football right now. But when no team thought Jeff George was good enough to be a starter, Jeff George didn't play anymore because people don't like Jeff George. They got to think that you are a good hang. Part of this is a jokey exaggeration. A lot of it is real as penitentiary steel. And where we are in the NFL, where this is progress with the quarterbacks as it relates to black quarterbacks, is there are a lot of the career backup quarterbacks. Geno Smith hung around as a backup long enough to get back to being a starter, right? To get to a place where a lot of people thought he might have been able to get early in his career. 20 years ago, that doesn't happen. You see what I'm saying? We got a lot of other guys that we could point to. Tyrod Taylor is able to make big backup quarterback money in the league right now after being told he wasn't a starter. It used to be basically either you was a star or you couldn't get on. That's not the NFL anymore. That's not happening. Okay? And so I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't acknowledge what the actual state of affairs is right now. Because look, there's still issues, right? And there's still some questions about like how quickly a black quarterback loses his job, for example. What are the things that a black quarterback has to answer for? All of those things are still questions that we have to deal with. All of those things still exist. None of those things have at all to do with Shedeur Sanders. None of them do, okay? This is what has to do with Shedeur Sanders, I believe. And this, I think, is very, very important, okay? I think for everybody to pay attention to and understand. I believe, and I want to say this is not simply based on speculation. I talked to people who do a lot of draft evaluations. I talked to people in the media who covered this and some people around the NFL. Okay. And my question was, how did we hear that Shedeur was going to go so early and then he went in the 5th round? Because him going in the 5th round is not unreasonable. Once again, anybody who tells you everybody thought that Shedeur Sanders was going to go in the 1st round is either lying or doesn't know what they are talking about. Because I can tell you one show that told you that there was a chance that he was going to quote unquote slide, and it was this show right here. I told you guys that this was probably going to happen. So I talked to one dude in the media who I've known for a very long time and I absolutely trust. And what he told me was very, very interesting. What he said was how we got here is a combination of two things. One of them is that you couldn't get a straight answer from anybody at Colorado about Shedeur. That everybody at Colorado was so over the top complimentary of Shedeur, keeping in mind that his father is the coach there. Nobody wanted to say anything negative about him. which then made a lot of evaluators, whether they be team evaluators or people that do this for the media, that made a lot of them really skeptical because they couldn't tell. People didn't have the sources to give them a clear read. The other thing was, he said that so they've got that. They're not trusting the info. They don't think the film is good. So then they got to a place where they were like, okay, well, let's just say where we think he's going to go. But also people being very skeptical and worried about saying something bad because Shedeur Sanders is vengeful toward media members. You saw that at the start of the 2024 season where he started telling people that they couldn't come to press stuff and answer questions because he didn't like what they had said. All right. And so then you wind up with people being nervous and they don't really know. And so people are putting them in their mock drafts because they want it. Right. Go ask people who cover the league and cover the draft. Ask them who they had, who they talked to that said that Shedeur Sanders was a first rounder. Because this guy told me he didn't have anybody tell him he was a first rounder. The guys that I know, I didn't have any of them tell me that Shedeur Sanders was a first rounder. They didn't have anybody that said he was. So it wound up in that situation. You ever been in something at work where everybody thinks somebody else going to do it? Especially when it's something that nobody wants to do. Everybody just thinks somebody else is going to do it. Oh, well, okay, I ain't worried about that. Somebody else going to do it. Then you look up and nobody had it done. Everybody thought somebody else was going to take Shedeur. But none of them wanted to take him themselves. And so when the guys call up and they do their mock drafts, they're like, what about Shedeur? And they're like, hey, man, I don't know, but somebody will take him. And it just goes around in this circle and everybody says, well, hey, somebody's going to take him. But part of the reason a lot of these teams couldn't do it on the evals was Shedeur and his father did not make it easy for people to evaluate him. They appeared to behave. I'll give you an example of somebody who did this. Michael Porter Jr. in the NBA was coming off a back injury and went into the draft. And they were trying to maneuver where he went. And so one way that they maneuvered where he went was don't give up the medicals. So this guy's coming off of back surgery. For example, the Chicago Bulls. Hey, Michael Porter, we're thinking about drafting you. Can you give us your medicals? Nope. You'll have to take me guessing about the state of my back. Hey, Denver, we want you. You want to give us our medicals? Hey, we like Denver. Okay, cool. We'll send them over. You see what I'm saying? That's how that goes, right? You try to make it to where you go. That's the sort of thing that you can do when you have leverage. And what is very clear to me is that Dion misjudged what kind of leverage his son had. He got bad information. I think his son was operating on the principle that my daddy knows everything. My daddy knows this league. And my daddy says I'm going to be a top 10 pick. So I ain't got to go to all these places. I have had people tell me things about the way that Shedeur carried himself in meetings that he had with teams. And it was poor. It was the way that you behave when you have the leverage. And he wasn't good enough to have that leverage. And again, some of us were telling you that as a talent, there were shortcomings. He didn't have the physical traits that NFL teams look for. We told you this. We did. So stop acting like everybody was so sure that Shedeur was going to go early. And then now the league they decided to put their thumb on this outspoken black man. You know how disrespectful that is to actual outspoken black men? Like, do you get it? No, that's just not what happened here. They thought they had more flex than they did. They thought the league was more interested in him than they did. They thought these teams were like, hey, they need a quarterback. They're going to take this one. They seen what it is. They ain't going to pass this up. And they passed it up over and over and over and over again. And once again, what did I tell you earlier? If you're not going to play and you're going to be quarterback, people got to like you. And the way that he went about this process did him no favors. And again, it's not simply about him being confident. Do you know how many confident black men they deal with all the time in this league? Like, why are you acting like he's the first one? It's almost like you're implicitly calling the rest of these cats Uncle Toms. Shedeur the one, right? Shedeur the one that's standing up to the powers. No, that's just not what happened here by all the information that I've taken in at this point. He just overplayed his hand. His father overplayed his hand. And that's where you see at the end, though, once he got drafted, he sounded a lot more humble, didn't he? And what I hate about this, honestly, for him and honestly for Deion Sanders, is by overplaying this hand and talking this up and basically coming up with a strategy that treated Shedeur Sanders like he was Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders can go to the combine and not do nothing but run the 40 and tell my agent to call me and leave if Deion Sanders wants to do that, right? All this stuff Deion can do. Deion Sanders can go to practice and not wear shoulder pads. He can do all this stuff. Shedeur Sanders isn't that good. He can't use the same program, right? The promotion of Shedeur has worked out very, very well. But carrying yourself like a star only works if you are one. And in this case, he is not. They didn't have it like that. They couldn't do that. But they did. But they tried. But the disservice is this. Shedeur Sanders was lightly recruited. Before Deion got that job at Jackson State, he had signed to play for Florida Atlantic. He was going to go play for Willie Taggart at Florida Atlantic University. Deion Sanders, who, to my eyes, has been running a grand quarterback experiment for a long time to get one of his boys as an NFL quarterback, has coached this young man all the way through since he was in high school, brought him to Jackson State, got him the best player in the country to throw passes to, took that to Colorado, built that program up, got Travis Hunter to a place of being a Heisman Trophy winner, and got Shedeur Sanders all this pub, got him to the place of being a second-team All-American, and this guy that was not a heralded recruit got himself to be a fifth-round pick in the NFL draft. You know how hard it is to be a fifth-round pick in the NFL draft? And do you appreciate how difficult it is to be a fifth-round pick in the NFL draft? And the two of them together did that. Deion Sanders might be dad of the year. He engineered all of this and pulled this off and got his son into that position. And everybody that claims they're supposed to be happy for him is all caught up in what didn't happen. All caught up in him not getting the pick that somehow you thought that he deserved to be, even though the league never said that he was a pick of that caliber. They never did. Applaud that young man, because he the one that stood on camera getting embarrassed the first night. He the one that stood on camera the second night. He the one that had to deal with that asshole little boy, the son of the defensive coordinator of the Falcons, who prank called him. And I just want to throw this out here. 21 is old enough to drink, old enough to drive a car, old enough to go outside and fight your daddy like a man. Just throwing it out there, Mr. Old Brick. Grab the gloves and take him out back, because somebody need to show that boy what life is. But anyway, Shedeur had to put up with all of that. He had to endure that. He's the one that's now going to have to climb the depth chart. But you know what? One could look at that as a continuation of the story. But that's not the story that the Sanderses wanted to tell us. They wanted to tell a story that put the cart a bit ahead of the horse. And then they lived a story where the cart stayed ahead of the horse. They made those mistakes. Nobody else did that to them. They played this like he was an NBA lottery pick and he was just another football player. That's how this all wound up going the way it did. But to my colleagues who are making this a cause, you are embarrassing yourselves. You are playing yourselves. Okay? And even if part of why he fell is because the people didn't like him, he was going for a job where being liked is part of the deal. They did it wrong. That's all it comes down to. They did it wrong. But do not. There are criticisms to be made of Colin Kaepernick, but he literally gave it all up in the name of a cause that was bigger than him. The only cause Shedeur Sanders has is himself. Don't you motherfucking dare act like those two things are the same. Do not. Have you lost the plot so badly? Look around you. The whole world is on fire. And you think that this is the thing to get mad about? You think that this is the thing to go march on and to go talk about? Because the NFL told an apparently obnoxious young man that he wasn't good enough to be a starter? He wasn't good enough to be a starter. If your thing is they took Johnny Manziel in the first round, do you think they would have done that over again? I saw somebody try to make a comparison between Baker Mayfield and Shedeur Sanders. Do you see how long it took for Baker Mayfield to become a good NFL quarterback? Baker Mayfield is one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time who actually had elite traits. If your argument is somebody took Baker Mayfield, oh, buddy, Shedeur Sanders, he ain't that. He's not that good. But again, that's an argument you make if you don't know what you're talking about. So those of you who don't know what you're talking about, and you know you don't know what you're talking about, would you please shut the fuck up? Because there are things that are so important that you're missing. And your outlook is not doing a service to the young man that you claim to care about. It's not. Because he got some things he needs to hear. And I don't know if his daddy's going to be the one to tell him. I don't know who's going to be the one to tell him. But he better learn them fast. Otherwise, his NFL career will end in August.